to my channel. I'm Literary Lizzie, and today I am going to be doing my December wrap-up. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it. So the first book that I read this month was Renegades by Marissa Meyer. So in this book, you have people called prodigies, and they have superpowers. If you are a prodigy, then you are either a renegade, the heroes, or the anarchists, which are the villains. Both the renegades and the anarchists have very different ideas of how society should be. When the renegades help people, the anarchists scheme to destroy and halt all renegade operations. The anarchists believe that in solving everyone's problems, the renegades put themselves in a position where too much dependency falls to them, which causes people to become complacent and just not take responsibility for their own problems. Our protagonist was one such person to believe this to be true. Nova's intelligence combined with her vengeance and conflicting emotions made for an impressive and exceptionally elaborate backstory that really had me hooked. This was a vividly told narrative and a very imaginative world. I liked how the book switched between the prodigy's perspectives. This book was just really well written, and I could easily empathize with either the heroes or the villains. This was just an all-around wonderfully thought-up story of the scrutinization between good versus evil. I ended up giving this book 5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read was The Glass Bear by DeStefano. I received this book from my monthly Owl Crate, and I didn't really like this book. So anyways, let me just tell you what it's about. So the protagonist is a princess named Will, and her father, the king, has trained her to become a spy. So she has this power where she can turn people into gemstones just by touching them. And it turns out that this power is a curse, so she sets off from her castle to find a cure for it. However, that's where this book turns for the worse. Once she leaves her home, the book just goes downhill from there. So like, I don't know, I felt like this book lacked in all the areas that matter. It was just dull and everything was completely dragged out. I was just amazed at how quickly I lost interest in this book. But yeah, the pacing was slow and the characters were so one-dimensional and the romance was completely bland. I ended up giving this book 2 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read was Artemis by Weir. He is the author of The Martian, and I loved The Martian so much, so I was excited to read this book. I wasn't as pleased with it as The Martian, but I really don't like comparing the two because they're completely different, so I'm just going to stick with talking about Artemis here. So, first off, our protagonist is Jazz Bashara, and she grew up in Artemis, the moon's only city. It's really like any other city, you know, there's corruption and crime, but it's just all sealed up in these bubble-shaped domes. So she's a wisecracking, problem-solving 26-year-old Saudi Arabian who can manipulate science and metal like it's nobody's business. So as a member of the working class, she squeaks by as a porter and also as a smuggler. So she just like really just envisions herself as improving her social status. For the most part, Jazz was an effective protagonist because due to the nature of her job, she is placed in direct contact with both the rich and the poor. So that gives us as the readers direct access to seeing like all aspects of this society. So I thought that was really cool. So props for that. So this is a sci-fi thriller, and this book just would have been so much better if the protagonist just didn't swear so much. I don't know why that got on my nerves so much. And also like the references to Jazz's sex life overpowered the storyline of this book so much. Like each page is like filled with shenanigan talk, and I just wasn't having it, so that's why I knocked a couple stars off. But I liked how everything was analyzed, of course, but when you're in the middle of an action scene, you don't want to be interrupted with every little thing being explained to you, like all the mechanics and stuff. Like, I just didn't really like that part. So anyways, so there's so much explanation of like technical stuff, and there's very little character development due to this, so that wasn't really good. So anyways, just one little detail I want to mention is that I liked how the trading currency was. Like, they traded in slugs, which stands for soft landed grams, and basically it's just a system based on weights where things can be shipped from Earth to the moon. Like, I don't know why I'm bringing that up, it's just like cool, like have trading in slugs instead of money. They use this system, but I don't know, it's mentioned a lot in here and it just kind of stuck with me. So there you go. I ended up giving this book 3 stars out of 5 stars. The next book that I read this month was This Mortal Coil by Emily Suvada. This is a dystopian science fiction book where people are dying from a virus. Our main character, Katerina Agata, needs to decode a vaccine and release it as soon as possible, because this virus is mutating, and it's mutating fast and rapidly killing anyone within its radius. You can gain temporary immunity if you consume the infected. Gross. But you have to be cannibalizing them constantly to keep up this immunity because it's only temporary. Katerina's ability to manipulate technology through coding and hacking allows her to bypass and solve any challenges thrown her way. In this book, technological advancements allows apps to be easily downloaded into bodies to fix any malady, to touch up any feature, or to transform any physicality. So this book explores the possible extinction of humanity in an entirely plausible way, in my opinion. So the airborne virus causes the infected to combust into a toxic hydro cloud and pretty much decimates the landscape into devastation. So there's many plot twists, lots of vivid descriptions, and a bunch of technological talk, which I always appreciate. So with a cliffhanger at the end of each chapter, this book was packed with surprising moments and suspenseful scenes. I really liked this book. I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read was East of Eden by John Steinbeck, and let me tell you, oh my gosh, this book was amazing. So like the bitter tragedies entangled with the rich quality of each of the characters found in this amazing book, mixed with the striking retellings of Cain and Abel and also Adam and Eve, was just so intricate, and like I really liked the setting of the Salinas Valley. It was just like, oh my gosh, breathtaking. So this book basically dissects the ramifications of non-existent love. Like, that is to say, when your paternal or maternal or even spousal love is missing, then that pretty much just messes the person up. So we see that a lot in this book, and this is an epic that spans many generations, and I've never even read anything like this before. That's why I like it so much. But it was just so good. This phenomenal tale, it just brilliantly reverberates like inner logic, and it just really like pinpoints the misgivings of others. Like, I just really like this book. I ended up giving this book 5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read was Dare: The New Way to End Anxiety and Stop Panic Attacks by McDonagh. So I picked this book up because I have like this problem where I'm really anxious in like every situation, and I just needed help to overcome this. So I found this book and I read it, and I did find it to be extremely helpful, and within these pages are some pretty valuable information that if you are like me and if you're anxious like pretty much all the time, then you definitely have to pick this book up. And yeah, I plan on definitely following this person's advice because they apparently know what they're talking about. I ended up giving this book 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read was A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. I read this book for my book club, and I found it to be really pleasant, especially around winter time. And we chose this book because it was a Christmas book and we wanted to read something Christmassy. So this fulfilled that really nicely. So I really found this book kind of hard to read. I really couldn't get into it, and yeah, I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read was Without Merit by Colleen Hoover. I picked this book up because I saw it on Instagram one day and thought, that's a pretty nice cover. So I picked this book up and I finally read it. And that was kind of a mistake because this book was kind of disappointing. So anyways, this book is about a girl named Merit, and there is a lot of family drama going on in this book. So I found the characters to be really unlikable and not in the good way. Like, they were just so one-dimensional, and this in combination with the really ridiculous romance, and pretty much like there's like really no plot to this book at all. Everyone in this book is just acting like complete jerks, and there's no consequence for their behavior at the end of the book. Everything just wraps up and that's it. And I just felt like this book was just a hot mess. Everything just put together, and there you go. I didn't really like this book. I gave it a 1 out of 5 stars. The last book that I read this month was Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen. After reading that last book, I felt like I needed to read something with some substance. So I picked up this classic, and I absolutely love this book. So this is Jane Austen's debut novel, published in 1811. She like wrote this when she was like 20. So I was like really impressed with this. I mean, everyone like grows up knowing Jane Austen, but this is my first book that I've ever read by her. I've actually had this book quite a while. The pages are like yellow already, but I finally read it, and this book was awesome. So this is about two sisters who are basically the polar opposites of each other. We have Eleanor, who is practical and proper, and then we have Marianne, who is sensitive and romantic. I think I relate, at this moment in my life, I relate more to Marianne, which is kind of sad because I want to be Eleanor, you know. She's like so practical. So anyways, they live in Victorian England, and in this day and age, you have to act proper, or else people will look at you like, what the heck's wrong with you? So I love this book because we get to see these young women approach life in very different ways. Each of them has their own ideas of how to approach courtship and their own ideas about engagements and stuff. It was just really good. I really like seeing them interact with people without like breaking social etiquette. You have to be respectable. I feel like I'm saying respectable wrong. Respectable. You have to be respectable no matter what you're trying to accomplish. So this book was witty too. The writing was just so beautiful and so visually stunning. I actually have like some other Jane Austen books on my shelf that I am dying to get to next year because, I don't know, I feel like I'm going to be a Jane Austen fan pretty soon. Actually, I am. Never mind. I am a fan. She is just amazing. So I give this book 5 stars out of 5 stars. Okay, so that concludes my December wrap-up. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Bye!